Well, that's where we're keeping our focus this morning, addressing the security concerns we face in the country. And joining us to do that this morning are two retired Army colonels, Stan Lambo to my immediate right, and of course Tony Yem, for of course also has been in the Army. Thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily this morning. But you know, the concerns are just so much. Listening to what the members of the House of Representatives lamented about and saying, one of them was actually almost getting to the level of tearing on the floor there. And then you hear comments, if we don't address education, if we don't address the issue of population, if we don't be strategic about how the military goes about making announcements that may, you know, hurt the process, making an announcement on television that we're having this operation, having that operation. All this together, put together, Stan Lambo, what do you think we are up against?
Thank you so much for having me. Frankly, we are in a very serious situation, security-wise, in this country now. Despite all the concerted efforts by the military, so to speak, these efforts, I think, have still not met what I will call national expectations by way of the results that are coming out of all the concerted efforts they are putting in. Are they trying their best? Yes, they are trying their best, maybe within given resources and what have you. Do we have gaps in the resources? I mean, do we have a resource gap and so on? We would say yes, of course, we have a resource gap. Have we tried as much as possible to address some of these resource gaps? And when I say resource gaps, I want to zero in on just 5 major imperatives. And what are these major imperatives? I'm looking at funding, man management, equipment and logistics, training, and welfare. If we address these 5 issues adequately, I think to a greater extent, we will begin to see some results. Some others have said, look, why don't we change the leadership and so on? But we should understand also that, look, we also have a systemic, or the problem is systemic too. It's not just a matter of changing some of the key personalities.
You mean wouldn't that help?
What?
Wouldn't that help the situation?
It would, but we might just be scratching the surface. That is the truth. I'm more concerned about how we can probably even introduce some structural changes to our security architecture. For instance, yes, and as it affects formations. For instance, what's stopping us from introducing a very, very, very strong border patrol fighting force? I'm trying to address the problem holistically now, not just looking at what's ongoing operationally in the field. Because what's going on, or whatever we are trying to address in the field, has its own, some causal inputs. Our borders are very porous. That's well, very known to us. We have about the largest border within the African continent, covering well over 3,000 communities in 105 local governments, sitting on 21 states.
But the Minister of Interior,
yes,
Abdurrahman Dambazau, did come out to say that our borders don't have any challenge as far as is concerned. The reports reaching him is that the borders are manned adequately.
I'm afraid I will want to take an exception to that. And I think nearly every Nigerian knows we have a porous border. I have good sense of the Nigerian border. I'm not just talking from paperwork. I've served within border areas, be it up north, be it the Cameroon, Calabar axis, and so on. Okay? I was on Operation OP Harmony, that's the Cameroon-Nigeria skirmish. That's Bakassi. I was there for about 3 years.
We'll get to the operation.
So I have quite a good, clear understanding of what the border issues are.
Sorry, before we leave that point, why do we have porous borders, from your experience?
Yes, we have porous borders because...
Why?
Of course, okay, I would explain. The border is damn too large, and we have not taken any deliberate effort to see that we check what's ongoing at the borders, ranging from smuggling to movement of small arms and so on. And the activities ongoing at the border are so attractive to the small minds, for instance, and those who want to engage in any sort of fishy business, smuggling, like we all know. I mean, it pays those who are involved in it.
You talked about small arms now.
Yes, of course.
Could that also be, the route through which some of these so-called arms?
That is it, my brother. And that is the main reason why I'm even talking about we being able to exact enough checks on the border. If you know the amount of small arms that comes into this country, let me tell you this. After the elections now, we are experiencing serious skirmishes here and there. Why? Because before the elections, a lot of small arms were smuggled in. A lot of small arms were smuggled in.
Is this information unknown to the intelligentsia in Nigeria?
I wouldn't say it's unknown.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's unknown.
Because you have also watched the scenarios playing out. As a matter of fact, just over the weekend, we had attacks in Katsina State and in Zamfara State. Boko Haram attacked a village in Jimitulu in Maiduguri, killed 4 persons, leaving the 5th person injured with gunshot wounds. Keeping that in view and not forgetting the overall security challenge we face, ranging from kidnapping, banditry, what's your assessment of what's going on?
I think what my assessments are clear too. One, we are at times too focused on the operations, and every time there is a crisis, the service chiefs, it's become a ritual, go to the Aso Rock. All I see at times is who salutes the president best. And there's this show of saluting the president, and then there's a meeting, the ritual comes out, orders are given to service chiefs, and the issue is much more deeper and wider. One, the problems are there are constitutional problems, there are policy-making problems, and they are operational. We are dwelling on the operations, forgetting that what is engendering the threats we face is the political economy order we have. In the sense that if, for example, like we had an election which wasn't free and fair, it creates grievances which later can translate to sources of crisis. Where you have a system whereby we have the increase in population, which is growing massively, there's an influx of people coming in from Niger, Chad, through northwest, down to the south, that you can see everywhere around us, the high population of people coming in. And these people, not only are they don't have the skills, nor are they not educated, they are easily vulnerable to be used by anybody. That's one. On top of it, going by what the president said, and I would go further, the arms that were carted away from Libya were high-grade weapons by ex-guards of Gaddafi. And most of his guards were from Mali, Niger, Chad, and to a small extent Nigeria. These arms are in the hands of non-state actors.
Does that have any link with Boko Haram? Is that the reason why Boko Haram is being fueled?
It has linked with Boko Haram. It has linked with the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, who are training some of our people who are infiltrating to our land. It has linked to the kidnapping that you've just seen in Ife Road, because most of the kidnappers, as was one of the interview of the professor, some of them are not Nigerians. They speak Fulfulde, but they're not Nigerians. Now this, with people who have so much high-grade weapons, and people who are also skilled in the art of what I would call map reading, that is, they can move at night much more than any local person can move in his own territory. If you know what the headers know, they are very good. They use the stars. Where if you are in Lagos and you want to move at night from here to Agege, the Fulani man can find his way faster than you, even if you are an indigent. So they've got all the skills. Because of castle rustling, the people they call back to reinforce the operations are well-trained ex-soldiers. Now they come into play. So what we have is that I would suggest that first, we cannot continue to deal with political economic system engendered threats by a fire brigade approach. We need approaches that are sustainable. And that is that first, there's a need for a system whereby the locals of every community are much more involved in their own different homeland security. We've negated that principle where the locals should be partners to the military in operation. We've negated. What we have is a hangover of forces of occupation in my own territory. In Zamfara, that was why you can see in Zamfara, the emirs are crying out. Because some of the people who came there, if they were Zamfara in the main, participating in the defense of Zamfara, there wouldn't be the outcry. So first of all, I'm saying that we've got it conceptually wrong that we still have the carryover, the colonial mentality that the police or the military we have in our territories are strangers in different communities.
Is that the case? I mean, if you say that the police and the military we have are strangers in our midst, they're the same people who we call upon whenever we have this attacks, especially.
Stranger in the sense that, stranger is this. I would put it this way. It may sound radical. I have watched the way OPC is organized in Lagos. There is no, if you go to Munshi, you won't find an OPC guy there who is from Ajagule. He's a local guy. He knows the territory. He knows the ground. What we have done is that it negates policing principle all over the world.
Well, the army chief, I'm sorry, the army chief, Borutai, is from Borno State, and he knows the territory very well. So how then can these arguments stand?
Can I come in? Let me answer that directly. Go and check. The bulk of the soldiers fighting in the northeast are from the south. The bulk are from the south. He is the army chief, no doubt, but he's not the soldier on the ground. He's not the officer on the ground.
Is that the reason why we're having this failed or resurgence of Boko Haram in the northeast?
No, I wouldn't think so. That is the reason why we're having the failed or resurgence of Boko Haram in the northeast. No, I don't think so. I was trying to build up an analysis which could have led or availed answer to what you've just asked now. I think partly responsible for that is the inherent deficit, okay, which we have probably emanating from a resource gap on ground, all right? And if some of these had been addressed adequately, because we must face it, the military, as we speak, is overstretched. There is nowhere we are deploying men now that will have the requisite strength that should be deployed on ground.
So why is the military not complaining?
Why is the military not complaining? If they are complaining, we might not know. Probably they are complaining to the authorities above. But one other thing you should understand with the Nigerian system is that I might sit here and speak boldly and confidently about an issue affecting my constituency, the military. If I were to be in uniform with my peeps here, I would shy away from saying that. One, because I want to retain my job. Two, because I need my next promotion. And if you're my boss, I want you to like my face. So I probably tell you what you want to hear.
Could this then be the reason some information, don't get to the appropriate authorities as and when due?
I think so, partly responsible. And that's why we were saying part of the problem is systemic.
Couldn't that also be playing politics with people's lives, Colonel Nyam?
No. First of all, practice everywhere. No military man would complain or oppose his authority. The military will always do what the political leadership. What I'm saying is that the failure is mainly at the policy level, that is, at the political head level.
So there's something you said the other time. You said that much of the strategy should be more localized. So more local people should be deployed into these areas. I remember one of our guests some time ago, I forgot his name now, said that his own family members are in his locality.
Yes.
And some of them actually leave home to join the insurgents. They are locals.
Sure.
So there is no way they can. So how can you then get these same locals who are enemies of their own people to fight themselves?
No, first of all, you see, if you alienate the locals, and I've told you earlier, they're unemployed, they're idle-minded, and someone comes and offers them what you didn't offer them. I am saying my policy is that you have to incentivize incentives to the locals to come in. First, we got the whole thing conceptually wrong in that I am saying that there is nowhere else in the world where you have, if you go to Uttar Pradesh in India, the main first line is by locals. The regiments there are even given the ethnic name there. The Himalayas, if you go to, I have been to the Himalayas. The troops there, the first line are the locals in the Himalaya. They are not before the troops come. I am saying we miss that line. That is, we need to have our people engage in the defense of their different homelands.
Where does that? Where do we start that from?
Where
from
do we?
The deployment of the police officers?
No,
Where do
we start that from the constitutional level. At the moment, how we are constituted as a country, and how the army takes its establishment from, is over-centralized system. Over-centralized in the sense that it alienates the people to be involved in their own security. So all the call we try to call on the people to participate. There are no structures for the people to participate actively in their own defense.
Then let me pick you up on something you said, just so that we are aware about it. Can you substantiate when you said that more than less of the people fighting and prosecuting the war against Boko Haram in the northeast are Southerners?
Obviously, because the issue is this. I was trying to address the issue about knowing the ground, not knowing the ground as much as the northeasterner person will know. That is, if you remember, the governor of Borno had to spend a lot of money on the civil task force or civil task force. But if you know, the civilian task force is not legally allowed to carry arms by the constitution we have. So the people who are coming in are outsiders. The bulk of the soldiers in the northeast are not northeasterns by the way we recruit into the army. The bulk of soldiers are non-indigens. And because they are non-indigens, and are also, at times, some of the actions they take may in fact push certain locals to drive them to join the enemy we are fighting.
So it makes more sense for you, for instance, now that in the deployment of security forces, the army, the police, if you will, even the Air Force, we send in people who are familiar with the area, people from the area, even if we are a little short.
Can I correct you the word? Not to send, but to have a force that is organically from that area. In other words, this is why, again, the example I will use, that's why you have, in the US, the first line defense is National Guards, who are local of that state.
Okay, Colonel San,
Yes.
how do you work in such a manner that you're able to beat an ideology such as Boko Haram, which is both Hausa and Arabic put together, Boko and Haram, meaning Western education is sin. That's an ideology, because the more you have this, you did talk about the different kinds of operations that we have spread across the country, but in the Northeast is basically Operation Lafia Dole. If you have that operation, it has been in existence for a long time now. People had expected that by now we would have crushed Boko Haram, and Boko Haram would have been totally eliminated. But you have these mop-up operations that come in now and then by the same Operation Lafia Dole. Is the ideology stronger than the efforts of the army?
Well, of course, when you talk about ideology, it's something you cannot easily crush off. It takes a far longer time for you to be able to, let me use that word, crush off an ideology, because it's just like your faith. Be you a Muslim, be you a Christian, or whatever, my belief is my belief. And say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do, you might not be able to get me out of it. It takes a lot of education, and that is where we missed it from the word go. If you look up north, where we come from, there seems to be a huge education gap. Look at the situation with the Almajiris, where I would say parents, whether deliberately or not, turn their eyes away from their kids who are on the streets, in the guise of religion, begging for what to eat and so on. We have discussed with Muslims who will tell you, look, some of these things are not really Islamic per se, by way of practice. And even if it were, we have lost it. Okay? Now the point I'm trying to drive home is this. We allow a generation to emerge to a point where it becomes a bit rather difficult to control them. And as a nation, I don't know, it could be my opinion, we have failed in our attempt to be able to identify, imagine issues that will give us problems tomorrow. I don't want to mention names of some groups, even up north now, which frankly speaking, if I were the president, by now I would have outrightly banned them. I know what I'm saying. We are on national television. I don't want to mention certain names of certain groups, but these are groups which, frankly, if you are a patriotic Nigerian, you will say, look, I think these guys should be washed.
Are they known to authorities?
They are known to the authorities. They are well-known names. I'm tempted not to mention names of groups here. These are groups who tomorrow, even if we crush Boko Haram now, in another 10 years, would emerge as a fresh Boko Haram. And we are seeing them.
Is it as a result of what you say, the children? I mean, they
are emerging under the guise of religious groups and so on, and we are watching. Everybody is taking sides. No, don't touch them. Fundamental human rights. We'll be dancing around the whole issue until it hits us.
What would you have the authorities do precisely about that situation?
Call them to order, and if possible, disband them outrightly. Look, we must, given what we have seen as a nation, by now there are certain lines of actions we should be taking because of our tomorrow.
Someone suggested decisive action.
That is it, sir. Because of our tomorrow. But we pay lip service to nearly everything.
But you said
we are too sentimental.
You said a while ago that it's more difficult to crush an ideology.
Yes.
And just as you said, these new emerging fundamentalists, as you said, they are also an ideology. How can we deal with them?
That is the point I'm making, sir. We are watching them grow.
We'll let you answer that. I'm sorry, my apologies. Okay. But we'll let you answer that when we return from this break. Join us again. Welcome back, and we just heard from the Inspector General, the Acting Inspector General of Police, after which we will focus on some of his advancements and achievements. But first of all, Ayo has a question still?
Yes, Kanalawa, you were talking the other time, you said that an ideology is not so easy to break. Yeah. And you're now saying that this new emerging threat, you said in 10 years, could also be worse than the one that we are contending with now. So if it is also a product of an ideology, how do we handle it?
first and foremost, the right education should be coming out to our younger ones and to, let me say, adults. But why I'm laying emphasis on the younger ones, because they are our tomorrow. And in most cases, those coming out with this, what I'll call faulty ideology, that does not sit well with us in our society. In most cases, they know that they have their target group which they go after, the far younger ones, whom they know they can easily lay on their, with their minds and so on, than you and I who have seen it all. All right? So we need the right type of education going out. We need to look at our education system again. 2, we should be addressing certain, or let me say, yes, certain economic fundamentals, okay, that would be able to give individuals the empowerment that can make them have that level of independence to not fall prey to people who would come with all these sort of funny ideas. At times, I'll tell you the fact, a hungry man is ready to go for anything. He needs food. He has to eat to keep alive.
Okay. Colin, yeah.
No, my point on that is that when you, the question was asked, the sword can never be stronger than the pen. Ideologies are always stronger. And you can, no matter what you do. And I think if you look at in Afghanistan, the Americans tried to use projected forces to fight. They realized that they had to use Afghanistans to fight. My point goes back to that if you had the Northeast people more involved in taking on the Boko Haram, it would be easier to deal with than if you send someone they consider as an infidel to come to their community and who cannot enter certain places, because if you enter certain places, they will feel is desecrating the place. But you know what? The issue is the ideological problem in the North is also further helped by the fact that the elite have been so parasitic and have not carried the Talakawas along. So today we have a class conflict going up in the North. And if you may also know that the challenges in the North, even the Sultan is being challenged and the emirs are being challenged by those who have taken what they call the Salafists, that is, who have taken the ideology that they have to restore Islam to its purity in the way of Prophet Muhammad, peace be to his name. Now, because the leadership is corrupt, as we see, which the president is trying to fight, you see, with the corruption, it makes ideology unstoppable, because those who have been governing in many parts of the North have only been catering for themselves. They've not catered for the poor people.
Are you indicting the political class in the North?
Indeed.
Sure.
But generally in Nigeria, but more so in the North, that the leadership have not extended the democratic dividends, so-called, to the Talakawas. So the Talakawas, who at times, when it comes to crisis, they used to fight so-called their cause, and after they've used them, they leave them. The chaps have now seen that we have the power. We are being used. That's what created Boko Haram.
Okay, let's talk about the Inspector General of Police. The President made a statement when he returned from London, and he said that he is, I think the statement went something like, if I'm able to quote it correctly, that the IGP is losing weight, and that will suggest that he's actually doing his work properly. In that light, are you having a sense of comfort with Mr. President's comments as to perhaps the service chiefs should also be losing weight, or if they're not losing weight, perhaps they're not doing their work?
Frankly speaking, the new IG has really brought, do I say, an impetus into the entire machinery of governance as far as the police is concerned, or administration. And we see a lot of changes, and we could see this desire in him really to effect certain changes on ground. And if what you are saying concerning the service chiefs is to probably give the impression that maybe the service chiefs are not up and doing.
No, I'm not giving an impression. I'm just
Okay.
relying on what the president said. He said that the
Yes.
IG is losing weight, and he
Yeah.
has never said that to the service chiefs.
Well, in the case of the service chiefs, I must say this, frankly speaking. The service chiefs are doing their best, their very best. I was having a discussion about 3 or 4 days back with a very senior man in government, and I told him, look, frankly speaking, our service chiefs are trying. In recent past, I have not seen a crop or a set as this group of service chiefs now. But if, like it is in everything, it has reached a point where we think, look, these guys have tried. They've pulled us out of the doldrum when we were right in there looking at all what they did in the Northeast when they took over and so on. The magical wand, so to speak, which I would say they came in with and so on. You know, if the impression is that, look, it has reached a stage where we could now inject another fresh team to take over from the good job they have done so far. And let's see if we can accentuate again beyond where we are. There is nothing wrong with that. But when we talk about changing the service chiefs in a derogatory manner that seems to leave the impression that they have not done well, some of us will always take exception. Because frankly speaking, I look back to my years in the military and see service chiefs that had emerged and see what these gentlemen are doing now. Is it in terms of welfare? Is it in terms of innovation in the field? And so on. And I say, wow.
You know, the police still in Katsina
Yes.
and Zamfara, they're border states.
Yes.
And you have this huge forest, the Rugu forest, if you're familiar with that, that axis. It seems to suggest that those kidnappers and bandits, they take advantage of that forest just as they took advantage of the Sambisa forest.
Yes.
In the northeast.
Yes.
This renewed level of crisis that we see, especially for Zamfara State and for Katsina State. Some people say that even Katsina is underreported because there are so many killings happening every day in their tents. What can the security architecture do such that we're able to mop up whatever it is that is happening in the Ruga forest? That would be the Rugu forest.
The end state, as far as joint force integration in our recent operations is concerned, I think we've not attained it yet. National expectations are yet to be met. If there is a high-level force integration, joint force integration, I mean, frankly speaking, I think the situation in Zamfara could be improved because that would allow for shared information, that would allow for synergy in terms of operations and so on. Proper coordination between the air component and the land component, you know, in giving us the right result. Except if, like I mentioned, those 5 imperatives are impacting seriously on the operation itself.
That's the
If
5
it is
imperatives you mentioned at the start.
funding, manpower, equipment and logistics, training and welfare. Those 5 imperatives.
Okay, sure.
I will really say that in response to the comment the president made, I think there is too much emphasis on the operation, which is already, people are doing their best. I think the president himself has work to do. And luckily for us, for the first time, maybe after this is going abroad, he has reflected. He made a statement 2 days ago, which is very welcoming about federalism. You see, there's a direct relationship with the, what I will call not fit for purpose constitution we have now and the recurring national insecurity we're having. And I think the president has a duty to do as much as he's talking about his service chiefs and the police, he himself has to start the constitutional reforms, which would be to introduce things like state police, and if you need to go further, to introduce what I will call homeland security. It's got so bad that it's got so bad that we now even desperately need what I will call what they had in Mexico, self-defense forces in each communities. Is that bad? If the road between Ibadan and Ife is already ambushed, if the road between Abuja and Kaduna is so bad that generals are avoiding that road and heading into train, we are in serious problem. We are in a war situation. I think the president, he sent out two signals which are good. One, in leaving the CBN governor. Two, this issue of federalism, which is speaks. I just do hope, as many of my friends are telling me that, oh, he's only playing politics. But I don't see him as a man who is frivolous. He should, if he wants a legacy, he should return Nigeria to true federalism. And by that, he should devolve power in the true sense.
How is he going to, you talked about homeland. You talked about homeland.
Just a minute. Before I go down. You see, when we are living the lie where you say a governor is chief security officer and he hasn't got any means of enforcing security, it's a joke. So this is why the governor of Zamfara, the governor of Katsina, the president's state have been crying out. And for a governor to be crying out that he cannot do nothing shows that there is a big flaw, which I'm happy the president is giving a sign that he's now going to listen to the issue of restoring federalism to Nigeria.
There's just so much to talk about, so many issues, and even trying to proffer solutions. But I must thank both of you, retired colonels, Tony Yam, goes to my extreme right, and Hassan Standambo. Always a great pleasure having you talk to us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be back after these messages. Join us again.